What if I told you that roads, railways, ports, and power plants are becoming the new weapons of global power? For decades, the United States dominated the global economy and international politics. But now, another superpower is expanding its influence across Asia, Africa, Europe, and Latin America, not through war, but through infrastructure. This is the story of China's Belt and Road Initiative, and why the United States is trying to counter it. Is China helping the world develop, or building a global system of influence and dependency? And can the US actually stop it? Let's break it all down. Just a few decades ago, China was one of the poorest countries in the world. After years of civil war, political instability, and foreign occupation, China in the mid-20th century was largely rural and deeply impoverished. But everything changed in 1978. Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping launched the famous reform and opening up policies. China slowly shifted from a strict communist economic system toward market reforms and industrial growth. Factories exploded across the country. Foreign companies poured in. Massive infrastructure projects transformed cities overnight. Within around 40 years, China became the world's second-largest economy, the manufacturing hub of the planet, a major military and geopolitical power. Most importantly, China lifted more than 800 million people out of extreme poverty, one of the largest economic transformations in human history. But China didn't stop at developing itself. Soon, Beijing started exporting its development model to the rest of the world. In 2013, Chinese President Xi Jinping launched the Belt and Road Initiative, also known as the BRI. The idea was simple but incredibly ambitious: build roads, ports, railways, pipelines, and digital infrastructure across the world, connecting China to global markets. Today, more than 150 countries participate in the BRI. China has invested in projects across Pakistan, Laos, Cambodia, Tanzania, Nigeria, Central Asia, Latin America, and many African nations. Some major examples include the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, high-speed railways in Laos, ports in Sri Lanka, energy and mining projects across Africa. For many developing countries, Chinese money arrived much faster than Western financing. China promised fewer political conditions, faster construction, massive infrastructure investment. And for countries lacking roads, electricity, railways, or ports, this was extremely attractive. But China was not doing this purely out of generosity. There were major strategic benefits behind the initiative. The Belt and Road Initiative helps China in several powerful ways. First, economic expansion. China needs global markets for its products and technology. By financing infrastructure in developing nations, China creates new trade routes and future customers for Chinese businesses. Second, access to natural resources. Many developing countries possess valuable raw materials: oil, copper, lithium, rare earth minerals. By building relationships and infrastructure, China secures long-term access to these critical resources. Third, geopolitical influence. Infrastructure creates influence. When a country depends on Chinese financing, construction companies, or trade routes, Beijing gains political leverage. This increases China's diplomatic power globally. Fourth, managing industrial overcapacity. China produces enormous amounts of steel, cement, machinery, construction equipment. BRI projects help China export this excess industrial capacity abroad. Fifth, creating strategic trade networks. China wants to position itself at the center of global trade. Projects like railways, ports, and energy corridors strengthen China's role in international supply chains. In many ways, the Belt and Road Initiative is not just an economic project. It's a long-term geopolitical strategy. China has invested over $1 trillion globally during the last 2 decades. So how does Beijing protect all this money? Most BRI projects are financed through government-to-government loans, Chinese state-owned banks, Chinese state-owned enterprises. These deals often include collateral agreements, long repayment periods, strategic control clauses, and if countries struggle to repay loans, China may renegotiate terms. The most famous example is Sri Lanka's Hambantota port. After debt repayment problems, the port was leased to a Chinese company for 99 years. Critics call this debt trap diplomacy. China strongly rejects that accusation and argues that Western nations are exaggerating the issue for political reasons. Still, concerns remain, because if many countries fail to repay loans, the consequences could become global. If major Chinese overseas investments begin collapsing, the impact could be enormous. China's economy is deeply connected to commodity exporters, manufacturing networks, infrastructure financing, global trade. A major failure could trigger global economic slowdowns, falling commodity prices, debt crises in developing nations, banking stress inside China itself. Countries heavily dependent on Chinese investment could face severe financial instability. Meanwhile, China might reduce foreign lending and focus more on domestic economic security. Some analysts even warn that large-scale BRI failures could reshape global supply chains and shift manufacturing toward other regions. And this brings us to the United States. Because Washington has been watching China's growing influence very carefully, the United States is not directly trying to destroy the Belt and Road Initiative. Instead, Washington is trying to counter it with alternatives. The U.S. strategy focuses on three major goals: reducing China's geopolitical influence, offering competing infrastructure projects, warning countries about the risks of Chinese debt. One major initiative is the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, or PGII. This G7-backed plan promotes transparent financing, sustainable infrastructure, high labor and environmental standards. Another project is the India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor, announced during the G20 summit. This route aims to connect India, the Middle East, and Europe, creating a potential alternative to Chinese trade corridors. The United States also works with allies like Japan and Australia through initiatives such as the Blue Dot Network, which promotes financially sustainable infrastructure projects. At the same time, Washington often highlights what it calls the debt trap risks of Chinese loans. The U.S. has even encouraged some countries to reconsider BRI participation. For example, Italy officially withdrew from the Belt and Road Initiative in 2023. But despite American pressure, the BRI continues to survive and evolve. As of 2026, most experts believe the United States cannot completely stop the Belt and Road Initiative. The project has become too large, too global, and too deeply connected to developing economies. Instead, the real competition is about influence. China offers fast infrastructure, state-backed financing, long-term connectivity. The United States offers transparency, higher standards, private sector investment, technological leadership. In the end, many countries may not choose one side or the other. They may try to benefit from both. And that is what makes this competition so important. Because the future of global trade, infrastructure, and geopolitical power may depend on who builds the roads of tomorrow. So what do you think? Is China genuinely helping developing nations? Or is the Belt and Road Initiative creating long-term dependence? And can the United States really compete with China's global infrastructure machine? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more global politics and geopolitical analysis videos.